Alright everyone, so today I wanted to do a spotlight on the Frenzy gear set. Now the Frenzy gear set is going to be a bit more of an advanced gear set in Raid Shadow Legends. It's going to be a bit more difficult in order to form out the 4 reasonably good pieces of gear that you're going to need to equip to be able to really properly utilize this set. But I definitely think it's a unique one, and I think it's got some crazy potential with the right champions and the right skill combinations. Now this is the actual icon that it looks like in game here. If you look at the actual description, plus 10% turn meter for every 5% HP lost. Now, if you're wondering where to actually acquire this gear, your best method to get it is going to actually be in the Fire Knight's castle. So Fire Knights right here, you'll see it on the list. It's a bit closer to the bottom, and generally speaking, it is going to be a bit more rare. And another way that you can tell is a lot of the different gear sets from both Fire Knights, Dragon's Lair, and Ice Golem Peaks. You've kind of got your more beginner sets towards the top. You've got your more intermediate sets in the middle, and then you've got your more advanced type sets at the end. That doesn't necessarily mean that the intermediate and advanced sets are better. They just tend to not quite drop as much. And also another important factor is when you do end up selling them to the vendor, they actually have a much higher default sales price. So that's something else you can tell if you take any piece of Frenzy gear, even if it's not 6-star. If you try to sell it, it's going to give you that higher sell value compared to other gear, the more basic stuff. Like if you were to sell, you know, 5-star life gear, you're going to see it's going to give you a much lower value. So it is not going to be easy to farm out a decent set of it, but if you do, I think there are some pretty cool applications that we can get into about how this gear set actually works. So the description could definitely be a little bit deceiving though, much like the shield set. I don't think that this description really does how good the set is any kind of justice. Plus 10% turn meter for every 5% HP lost. At least the good news is this one is a bit more clear about exactly what the gear set does, but there are still some important considerations to make that might change your mind a little bit. So getting into it, first of all, of course, it's a 4 set. It's not a 2 set. That's going to be a little bit more important later on when it comes to finding another gear set to kind of pair alongside with it. So you will give up 2 gear sets worth of stats, or at least 2 of the basic gear sets worth of stats to be able to use this on a champion. So that's something you do want to keep in mind. It gives 10% turn meter to the equipped champion's turn meter when they take 5% damage. Some important things to note though, if you take 4.9% damage or less, you're not going to get any turn meter. So if you take, 4.9% damage and then you take another 4.9% damage, even though that totals to over 5% because it came from multiple sources, it unfortunately is not going to actually activate the set effect. If you do take a lot of damage in one hit though, say you take 10% damage, it is going to boost your turn meter 20%. So if you take a ton of damage in one hit, it actually has the potential to pretty much boost your turn meter all the way up to full, immediately giving you the opportunity to take a turn. And this is why I said I really think this gear set is going to have some crazy implications and potential when you actually use it on the right champions with the right skills. So what I ended up doing is I went and I equipped a basic level 40 champion Ragemonger just with 4 pieces of the Frenzy set. Nothing really too crazy, just so I can show you guys as an example. We'll go through one of the campaign stages and just stay in the first part of it just so you guys can see what happens when you actually activate the set effect and what you can kind of expect if you do decide to use this gear. So we'll just step in here. I'm going to turn auto off. I'm going to take some hits and you guys will see that when you take damage, you'll see that my turn meter is actually being boosted by a relatively significant amount. And there we go. We took a pretty big hit right there, and it drew us almost all the way up to full turn meter. So if you are taking pretty beefy chunks of damage, you are going to get quite a bit of turn meter from this. But, it leads to that problem of, well, then how are you going to keep your survivability up? So even though the actual description of the set seems really awesome, and I think it has some awesome implications, there are some conflicts that kind of go along with really being able to get the full potential from this gear set. But nonetheless, that is what it looks like when you actually have the set equipped right there. So because the Frenzy set main function is going to improve as you take more damage, it's really going to be counterintuitive for you to build around it on extremely defensive based champions that aren't really going to take a lot of damage. Because if you think about it, right, you get more effect from the Frenzy set when you take more damage. So if you build a lot of defenses and you're building on a defense or an HP based champion, they're really not going to be taking 5% of their HP all too often or at all, then you're really kind of destroying the potential that the Frenzy set has. So you're not really going to be looking primarily for extremely defensive based stats on the gear set itself, as well as the champions that you are going to be equipping it on. You're really going to be mostly looking for those offensive based stats. Speed, of course, being the king of all stats. That's definitely always going to be something nice to find on it, but also things like, you know, crit chance, crit damage, things of that nature. I would even say there are probably some decent attack based champions that really have a lot of potential to use this gear set on, even though it's kind of commonly accepted at this point in the mid and late game that defensive and HP based champions are going to be better because of that survivability. Survivability really just kind of goes against the main function of this gear set. Alright, so when equipping a champion with the Frenzy set, you really want to focus on the skills that that champion has. So what skills does that champion have that might possibly allow you to get more benefit from the Frenzy set? And there's a couple that I already thought of. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I still think that there's even more work that I can do to really find some awesome champions that can really utilize this gear set to its fullest potential. But just a couple off the top of my head. First of all is going to be a skill like the Ally Protection, and there are plenty of champions in Raid Shadow Legends that do have Ally Protection. I know Nazana is the example of one of them. On her second skill right here, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns. So what ally protection is going to do is essentially you're acting like a tank or a shield for other champions, and when other champions take damage, now you're going to take a good chunk of that damage for them instead. So it increases the survivability of other champions at the expense of lowering the survivability of the champion that has the ally protection. So obviously, if you decide to equip the Frenzy set on a champion that uses ally protection, now that champion is by default just going to be taking a lot more damage and is really going to be able to get a lot more out of the actual gear set. Unfortunately, Nazana also kind of has a counter to the Frenzy set that makes it a lot worse in the second part of this ability, and that is the shield buff. Places a shield buff on a champion for 2 turns. The value of the shield is equal to 40% of this champion's max HP. So that's something that you're probably not going to want, because you're not going to be benefiting from that frenzy when you are taking chunks out of your shield. It's not going to start to activate until you start to take damage out of your actual HP. So that's a really important consideration to make, something that I think a lot of people who might try out this gear set might overlook, is if you have a lot of champions that shield each other, or you just use shield a lot, you're using a lot of like the divine gear set pieces or whatnot, you're really going to take away a lot of the usability from the Frenzy gear set. Now, another skill that I really think has some good potential with the Frenzy gear set, and again, this is going to be on a lot of champions, is a skill like Provoke. And I know Seeker, he has Provoke on his auto attack, just using him as an example here, but Provoke is going to make it so that when you place a Provoke debuff on a champion, it's going to by default attack that champion back, whereas normally it might try to attack like the most squishy champion, or it might try to attack other champions that you would think it wouldn't. Provoke is going to take that away, and now it's going to attack whatever champion placed the Provoke debuff on them. So again, what you're doing is you're focusing the damage on the champion that has the actual Frenzy gear set. They're going to take more damage, and then of course they're going to gain turn meter and really get a lot of benefit from the actual gear set itself. I'm sure there are other skills that I really want to do some more digging into this in the future, but I don't want to get too crazy in the first video. If I find any crazy champion skill combos that I come across later on in the future that really benefit from this gear set tremendously, I will definitely make sure to update you guys and make a more advanced video in the future right there. So good combinations for skills: ally protection, provoke, things of that nature. Things that work against the set are, of course, the shield skill and having shield on that champion, as well as just high defenses in general that are going to prevent you from being able to take that 5% damage threshold to be able to utilize the Frenzy set. Because the Frenzy set is also a 4-set piece of gear, you will be able to equip another 2-piece gear set alongside with it. This is another place where it might be really common to make the mistake of equipping a not so great gear set to work alongside with it. So just a list of things that work well, other 2-set gear pieces versus other sets that might not work as well. So any kind of the offensive gear sets are going to work really, really well. Like Cruel, of course, that's going to be your clan boss offensive gear set, which is very good for just straight up damage, because it's got that 15% attack, but it's also got 5% ignores enemy defense on a 2-set piece of gear. So that's going to be one of them right there. Crit damage, of course, is another advanced gear set that you're going to find in the Fire Knight's castle, which is really nice because they both come from the same location, so you can kind of both equip them at the same time. Just straight up 20% additional crit damage, which is really nice. You also have accuracy, of course, depending on the skills the champion uses. Just regular plain old offense is another one of the more basic gear sets, just for 15% extra attack. Unfortunately, a gear set that is really great for DPS that is not going to work very well with this is going to be Savage, because it's another 4 set. Won't be able to actually equip a 4 set with another 4 set. And also one that's really easy to overlook that you might think is really good are going to be like the Divine sets. You know, you've got your Divine Offense, Divine Critical Rate, Divine Speed, things of that nature. I would actually avoid using the Divine sets with Frenzy, because the Divine sets are going to come along with that 15% self-shield, which is just going to make it more difficult for you to activate the effect of the Frenzy gear set. So it's a little counterintuitive, even though the Divine sets really feel like they should be the best, and they are straight up. They have a benefit on top of the basic sets. The shield is going to work against you in this situation, and also the Divine sets are generally going to be a lot more difficult to find really good pieces that work well together compared to the basic sets, which you can find in many different aspects and locations in the game. So another gear set that I put on here in the kind of okay pile, it's not going to be as bad as, you know, probably the Divine sets, but it's not going to be, in my opinion, as good as something of the nature like Cruel or Crit Damage, is Speed. And I talked about this a bit in my shield video, why Speed is really going to be a gear set that benefits tremendously when you use more than one set of it. You don't just want one speed set, you probably don't even just want 2. You really want to use 3 of them on the champions that do use it. And that's because it's a percentage-based modifier right there that benefits by having even more speed modifiers. So your second speed set is not only going to give you additional speed based on what you already have, but it's also going to give you speed from your other speed sets. I know that's complicated, it's a little bit strange, but it's still a decent set, but it's not going to be the best one in my opinion. You really want to have as many speed sets as you can when you decide to go down that road, but hopefully you have some other options if you do decide to use Frenzy on some other reasonable gear sets that you can kind of pair alongside with it. So overall, though, I don't want this video to get too crazy. I know that there's a lot of digging that I could get into this, and I really, really want to. I'm going to spend a good amount of time over the next few days and few weeks trying to find some awesome champion and skill combos that can really utilize this Frenzy set to its fullest potential. But this was just more like of an introduction video on how the gear set works, the basics idea behind it, and also the stats and things that you want to do to really utilize it. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys did and you want more of an advanced video of really cool champions and skills that might benefit from this really, really well in the future, please feel free to let me know, and you know, if the reception is good, I'll definitely plan that in the future. But with that all being said, that is going to be it for the video today. I hope that you guys enjoyed another one of these gear spotlight type videos. It seems like you guys liked the one about the shield set, so I decided to mix it up and pick a gear set that probably not many people talked about that I think is pretty unique. So this was the gear spotlight introductory video for the Frenzy set, and of course, with that all being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy this video and you want more in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to toss a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine, and more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, and all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen right about now. Feel free to check them out, but if not, until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.